The command bridge of the Imperial warship Eternal Glory hummed with the quiet efficiency that Admiral had come to expect from her crew. Thousands of lights blinked across dozens of control panels. Officers moved between stations with practiced grace. Everything was exactly as it should be in the heart of the Empire's most powerful vessel. Stood at the center of the bridge, her tall frame casting a long shadow across the polished floor. Her scales, a deep shade of purple that marked her noble bloodline, caught the light from the massive viewing screen that dominated the front wall. Beyond that screen lay the endless darkness of space, dotted with distant stars that the Empire had claimed as its own over 10,000 years of conquest. She was reviewing the daily patrol reports when an officer approached her station. He was young for his position, barely past his first century, but his work was always precise. That was why she had chosen him for the detection team. "Admiral," he said, his voice carrying the slight tremor of someone delivering unexpected news. "We have detected an unknown vessel entering Sector 7. Did not look up from her reports. Unknown vessels appeared in their space every few cycles, usually traders who had lost their way, sometimes refugees from the border conflicts. Occasionally, pirates foolish enough to think they could steal from the Empire." "Classification?" she asked. Hesitated. That small pause made raise her head. In all the time he had served under her, had never hesitated. "The sensors cannot determine classification, Admiral. The vessel does not match any known design in our database." Now he had her full attention. The database contained records of every species the Empire had encountered in its long history. Every ship design, every weapon system, every piece of technology from 100 different worlds was cataloged and stored. For something to not match any known design was unusual. For something to not match anything at all was impossible. "Show me," commanded. The main viewing screen flickered. The star field disappeared, replaced by the image of the unknown vessel. Felt her breath catch in her throat. The ship was small. Compared to the Eternal Glory, it was barely larger than one of their shuttle craft. Its hull was a dull gray color that seemed to absorb the light around it rather than reflect it. There were no visible weapons, no shield generators, no engine ports that she could recognize. The design was smooth and flowing, like water frozen in motion. It looked nothing like the angular, aggressive shapes that defined engineering. It looked nothing like anything she had ever seen. "What am I looking at?" she whispered. "We do not know, Admiral." Scales had gone pale, a sign of deep unease among their kind. "The computer has searched the entire database. Every known species, every recorded encounter, every historical archive. There is no match." "That is impossible." "I agree, Admiral, and yet the evidence is before us." Stared at the strange vessel. It moved through space with a grace that seemed almost alive. There was no visible propulsion, no energy signature that their sensors could detect. It simply moved as if the laws of physics were suggestions rather than rules. "Scan it again," she ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know what it is made of, how it moves, and where it came from." The bridge crew rushed to obey. Watched as data began flooding across the secondary screens. Numbers and readings that should have made sense but somehow did not. The hull composition was unknown. The energy readings were impossible. The ship appeared to exist and not exist at the same time, like a ghost made solid. Then the computer finished its final analysis, and the bridge fell completely silent. Officer Myra, the senior communications specialist, was the first to speak. Her voice was barely above a whisper, and her claws were shaking as she gripped her console. "Admiral, the computer has found a partial match in the restricted archives." The restricted archives had served the Empire for 300 years, and she had only accessed those files once, during her promotion to Admiral. They contained the oldest records in history, dating back to before the Empire existed, before their people had reached the stars, before they had learned that the universe was full of other beings. "What match?" demanded. Myra looked up at her, and there was something in her eyes that had never seen before. Fear. Raw, primitive fear. "Human origin, Admiral. The vessel is of human origin." The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Around the bridge, officers stopped their work. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the constant hum of the ship's system seemed to grow quieter, as if the eternal glory itself was holding its breath. Humans had heard the stories, of course. Every child in the Empire heard them. Tales told in dark rooms to frighten young ones into obedience. Legends of beings from a distant corner of the galaxy who had walked among the stars before they had even developed fire. Creatures of terrible power and unfathomable purpose who had shaped the galaxy according to their will. But they were just stories. They had to be just stories. "Humans are myth," said, her voice harder than she intended. "They are fiction, horror tales invented by our ancestors to explain things they did not understand." "The computer disagrees, Admiral." Myra's voice was steady now, the professional training asserting itself over the fear. "The partial match is based on recovered artifacts from the Forbidden Zone. The design patterns, the energy signatures, the material composition, they all align with what little data we have on human technology. The Forbidden Zone has been sealed for 8,000 years. No one has entered or left that region since the Great Sealing." "Yes, Admiral, and yet this vessel bears all the markers of human construction." Turned back to the viewing screen, the small ship continued its steady path through their space, seemingly unaware or uncaring of the massive warship watching it. It moved with a confidence that bothered her more than she wanted to admit. The confidence of something that knew it had nothing to fear. "Navigator," she called out, "plot the vessel's trajectory. Where is it heading?" The navigation officer, a young female named Bora, worked her console with frantic speed. "The vessel is on a direct course for the Imperial core, Admiral. At its current speed, it will reach the capital world in approximately 6 cycles." 6 cycles, less than a local week, and the Imperial core was the heart of everything. The capital, the Emperor himself, the entire leadership of a civilization that spanned 1,000 worlds. "Communications," said. "Open a channel to Imperial Command, Priority 1. "Admiral, Priority 1 channels are reserved for." "I am aware of what they are reserved for." His voice cut through the objection like a blade. "Open the channel, now." The communication screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of High Commander. He was old, older than anyone had ever met, with scales that had faded to almost white with age. His eyes, though, were still sharp, still dangerous. "Admiral," he said, "this communication better be worthy of its priority level." "High Commander, we have detected an unknown vessel in Sector 7. The computer has identified it as being of possible human origin." She watched his face carefully. For a moment, just a single heartbeat, she saw something flash across his ancient features. Recognition. Fear. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask of command. "You are certain." "The computer is certain. I am. I am uncertain what to believe, High Commander. Humans are supposed to be legend." "Legends often have roots in truth, Admiral." His voice had changed. It was softer now, almost sad. "What is the vessel doing?" "It is traveling toward the Imperial core. Steady course, no deviation, no response to our presence." "Have you attempted communication?" "Not yet. I wanted to report to command first." "Good, that was wise." Paused, and in that pause felt the weight of something enormous, something she did not fully understand. "Admiral, I am going to tell you something that very few people in the Empire know, something that is not in any public record or military database." "High Commander." "Humans are not legend, they are history. Our ancestors encountered them long ago, Before the empire, before our civilization was anything more than scattered tribes fighting over territory, the humans found us. They watched us. They studied us. Felt cold despite the regulated temperature of the bridge. What happened to them? Nothing happened to them. They left. One day, without warning or explanation, every human vessel, every human outpost, every trace of their presence simply vanished. They sealed themselves away behind barriers we could not penetrate, in a region of space we could not enter. We called it the Forbidden Zone. We told ourselves they were gone, extinct, a dead species that we never had to worry about again. But they were not dead. We never knew for certain. We hoped. We prayed to gods we barely believe in anymore, and for 8,000 years our prayers seemed to be answered. Old eyes met hers through the screen. It appears our luck has run out. What should I do, High Commander? Do we engage? No, the word was immediate, absolute. You will do nothing. You will observe from a safe distance. You will not initiate contact. You will not fire upon the vessel under any circumstances. Is that understood? High Commander, if this vessel is heading toward the capital. I am aware of where it is heading, Admiral. I am mobilizing the entire Imperial fleet to intercept. Every warship we have will be between that vessel and our within 4 cycles. Until then, you will watch. Nothing more. The screen went dark. Stood alone in the silence that followed. Around her, the bridge crew had heard everything. They looked at her with eyes full of questions she could not answer, fear she could not calm, hope she could not give. She turned back to the viewing screen. The human vessel continued its steady journey, small and alone against the vastness of space. It looked so fragile, so harmless. She remembered the stories her grandmother had told her centuries ago. Tales of beings who could move through dimensions like water through fingers, who could reshape reality with a thought, who had watched the universe being born and would watch it die. Her grandmother had always ended those stories the same way, a warning whispered in the darkness. If the humans ever return, she would say, pray that they come in peace, because if they do not, nothing in all the stars will save us. Watched the vessel on the screen, and, for the first time in 300 years, she prayed. Captain stood at the helm of the horizon and watched the alien warship through the viewing window. It was massive, easily 100 times the size of his own vessel. Its hull bristled with weapons that looked capable of destroying small moons. Against such power, the horizon should have been nothing more than a speck of dust waiting to be swept away. Was not worried. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and kind eyes that had seen more than most beings in the galaxy could imagine. His dark hair was streaked with gray at the temples, the only visible sign of the centuries he had lived. Behind him, the rest of his small crew went about their duties with the calm efficiency of people who had complete faith in their captain and their ship. They are scanning us again, reported from the sensor station. She was young by human standards, barely past her first century, with quick hands and an even quicker mind. Their technology is quite advanced for a species at their stage of development. They should be proud. They probably are, replied with a small smile. Most young civilizations take great pride in their achievements. It is natural. Should we respond to their scans? They seem very curious about us. Considered the question. They had been scanning the horizon for almost a full day now. Their attempts were thorough but ultimately futile. Human technology had moved beyond the point where passive scans could reveal anything meaningful. It was like trying to understand the ocean by looking at a single drop of water. Let them look, he decided. They will not find anything that might frighten them more than the unknown already does. Pilot turned from his station at the front of the bridge. He was older than but younger than, with the calm demeanor of someone who had spent most of his life navigating between stars. Captain, I have completed my analysis of the alien vessel. It is impressive for its type. Powerful weapons, strong shields, significant crew complement. By the standards of this region, it would be considered formidable. And by our standards, paused, searching for the right words. A child's toy made with dedication and skill, worthy of respect for what it represents but not a threat. Nodded, he had expected as much. The gap between human technology and that of the younger species was vast. It was not a matter of years or decades, but of fundamental understanding. They saw the universe as a place to be conquered and controlled. Humans had learned long ago that the universe was far stranger and more beautiful than conquest could ever reveal. "We should make contact," said finally. "They have watched us long enough. It is time to introduce ourselves." The crew exchanged glances. Making contact with a younger species was always a delicate matter. Centuries of observation had taught humans that fear was the most common first reaction. Fear led to aggression. Aggression led to mistakes that could not be undone. "Shall I prepare a standard greeting?" asked. "Something simpler, I think. We do not want to overwhelm them." Thought for a moment. 3 words, "We come in peace." His fingers moved across her console. A moment later, a signal was broadcasting toward the alien warship. Simple electromagnetic waves, the kind of communication that even the most basic civilizations could understand. The message was clear, universal, and true. On the bridge of the Eternal Glory, alarms suddenly screamed to life. Admiral jumped from her command chair. "Report." "The human vessel is transmitting," officer shouted over the noise. "We are receiving a communication." On screen, the main display flickered. For a moment there was only static. Then, slowly, letters began to form. Letters in a language that the computer struggled to translate. Letters that finally resolved into 3 simple words. "We come in peace." The bridge fell silent. Officers stared at the screen with wide eyes. Some looked hopeful. Others looked terrified. All of them understood that this moment would be recorded in history, one way or another. "They speak to us," whispered. "After all this time, after 8,000 years of silence, they speak to us." The communication screen activated without warning. High Commander appeared, and he was not alone. Behind him stood dozens of officers in formal dress uniforms. The entire High Council of the Imperial Navy was assembled. "We received the transmission," said. His voice was controlled but could see the tension in his ancient scales. "We come in peace. That is what they say." "It appears to be genuine, High Commander. There is no deception in the signal that we can detect." "Of course there is no deception you can detect. They are humans. If they wished to deceive us, we would never know." Turn to address someone off screen. "Elder Sara, your assessment." A new face appeared. Recognized her immediately. Elder Sara was the oldest living member of the species, the keeper of the ancient records, the guardian of knowledge that most people had forgotten existed. Her scales were completely white, so thin they were almost transparent. Her eyes, though, burned with intelligence that centuries could not dim. "The message is interesting," Sara said. Her voice was like dry leaves rustling in wind. "Humans were never known for empty words. If they say they come in peace, they mean it. The question is, what does peace mean to them?" "Surely peace means the same thing to all beings," one of the council members said. "The absence of conflict, the desire for cooperation." Sara made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are young. You think in simple terms. Humans do not think as we do. Their concept of peace might include things we cannot imagine, or exclude things we consider essential." "What do you suggest?" asked. "Caution, patience, and above all, humility." Sara's ancient eyes seemed to look directly through the screen. "Admiral, you are closest to the human vessel. What do you feel when you look at it?" The question caught off guard. She was a military officer, trained to analyze threats and respond to them. Feelings were not part of her tactical education. But Sara was waiting, and one did not ignore an elder's question. "I feel small," admitted. "Not in a physical sense. The ship itself is tiny, but looking at it, I feel like I am standing at the edge of something vast. something I cannot comprehend. Sora nodded slowly. Good, that is wisdom. Hold on to that feeling, Admiral. It may save your life. Stepped forward, reclaiming the screen. The fleet is assembling. 300 warships will arrive at your position within 2 cycles. We will escort the human vessel to a neutral location and attempt formal diplomatic contact. And if they refuse, asked. The silence that followed was answer enough. Watched the alien warship on his screen. Its weapons were now fully powered, shields raised to maximum. He could sense the fear radiating from it like heat from a star. Fear was always the first response. It was the second response that mattered. They have not replied to our message, reported. But their communications traffic has increased significantly. They are talking to someone else. Their command structure, guessed. They are asking for instructions. It is what any good military officer would do. What do you think they will decide? Leaned back in his chair and considered the question. He had seen this situation play out many times before, with many different species. Some had welcomed the return of humans with open arms. Others had reacted with hostility that bordered on madness. Most fell somewhere in between, caught between curiosity and terror. They will do what their nature compels them to do, he said finally. They are conquerors. They have built their entire civilization on the principle of strength and dominance. When they see something they do not understand, their first instinct is to establish superiority over it. That could be dangerous for them. Yes, it could be. His voice was sad. But we cannot force them to choose wisdom. We can only offer them the opportunity to find it themselves. Cleared his throat. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting significant movement in this sector. Multiple large vessels approaching from the direction of the core worlds. How many? Current count is 300 and climbing. The crew processed this information in silence. 300 warships, against a single vessel with no visible weapons and a crew of 12. By any reasonable calculation, the outcome should be obvious. But the humans on the horizon were not worried. They had seen similar displays before. They knew what came next. They are assembling a fleet, said. Impressive response time. Their military coordination is better than I expected. Should we alter course? Asked. We could avoid their blockade easily enough. No, we came here with a purpose. Running away would send the wrong message. Stood and walked to the viewing window. Stars stretched out before him, countless points of light in an infinite darkness. Somewhere out there, his people waited for news, waited to learn if this mission of peace would succeed or fail. We will continue on our present course, he decided. When their fleet arrives, we will repeat our message. We will give them every opportunity to choose peace. And if they choose war? Did not answer immediately. He thought about all the species humanity had encountered over the long, the ones who had become friends, the ones who had chosen to fight, the ones who no longer existed because they could not let go of their fear. Then we will show them why war with humans is not a choice any wise species makes, he said quietly. And we will hope that they learn the lesson before it is too late. The horizon continued its journey through the stars, a small ship carrying a simple message. Behind it, the might of an empire gathered. Ahead of it, the future waited to be written. In her quarters aboard the Eternal Glory, Admiral sat alone in the darkness. She had dismissed her staff, ordered complete privacy. Now, with no one to see, she allowed herself to feel the fear she had been hiding. Humans were real, not myth, not legend. Real beings who had returned from whatever place they had hidden themselves for 8,000 years. Real beings whose ship everything she understood about physics and engineering. Real beings who claimed to come in peace. She wanted to believe them. Every rational part of her mind said that peace was the logical choice, the safe choice, the only choice that made sense when facing an enemy whose power you could not even measure. But 300 years of military training told her something different, something darker. Power respected only power. Strength understood only strength. If the humans were as advanced as the old stories claimed, then the only way to deal with them was from a position of dominance. Show weakness and they would consume you. Show strength, and they might respect you enough to negotiate as equals. It was twisted logic, born from centuries of conquest, but it was the only logic she knew. Her personal screen chimed with an incoming message. She activated it without thinking. High Commander appeared, alone this time. His ancient face was troubled in a way she had never seen before. "Admiral, I have new orders for you, orders that come directly from the Emperor himself." Straightened, orders from the Emperor were rare. Orders delivered personally were almost unheard of. "I am ready, High Commander. When the fleet arrives, you will take command. You will approach the human vessel and demand its surrender. If it refuses, you will open fire with everything we have." Felt her blood turn cold. "High Commander," the Elder said. "I know what the Elder said, but the Emperor has made his decision. We cannot show weakness. We cannot allow an unknown vessel to travel through our space unchallenged. Whatever the humans want, they must learn that the Empire is not to be trifled with. And if our weapons have no effect," face hardened, "then we will die fighting, but we will not cower, we will not beg. We are conquerors. That is who we are." The screen went dark. Sat in silence, the weight of the order pressing down on her like a physical force. In 2 cycles, she would lead the largest fleet ever assembled against a single small ship, a ship that claimed to come in peace, a ship that might be carrying the last hope for her species. And she would order that fleet to attack. She closed her eyes and wondered if the humans would understand, if they would forgive what was about to happen, if peace was still possible after blood was spilled. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the horizon continued on its course, carrying its simple message of peace. And the Empire prepared for war. The Imperial fleet arrived in a display of power that would have made any other species surrender on sight. 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. Each vessel was a masterpiece of engineering, armed with weapons capable of cracking planets and shielded by energy barriers that could withstand nuclear strikes. At the center of this armada sat the Eternal Glory, now serving as the flagship of the largest military operation in recent history. Admiral stood on her bridge, surrounded by her officers, watching as the fleet took its position around the tiny human vessel. The horizon looked impossibly small against such overwhelming force. It floated in the center of the formation like a single grain of sand on a vast beach. Its gray hull reflected nothing, absorbed everything. It made no attempt to flee, no attempt to hide. It simply waited. "Fleet positioning complete," Officer Bora reported. "All vessels in optimal firing positions. The target is completely surrounded." "Good," his voice was steady, hiding the storm of doubt that raged inside her. "Open a channel to the human vessel." "Channel open, Admiral." Took a deep breath. This was the moment. Everything that came after would flow from what happened in the next few minutes. "Attention, human vessel. This is Admiral of the Imperial Fleet. You have entered sovereign space without permission. You will power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will result in immediate destruction. You have 1 standard time unit to respond." The bridge fell silent. Officers watched their screens, waiting for any sign of activity from the small ship. Weapons officers had their fingers hovering over firing controls. Shield operators stood ready to reinforce any section that came under attack. Nothing happened. The horizon floated in its cage of warships unchanged, unmoving, unbothered. "No response," Officer Myra reported. "They received the message. Our sensors confirm they processed it, but they are not replying. Are they powering weapons? Negative. We still detect no weapons of any kind on the vessel. Shields. We cannot determine if they have shields. Our scans cannot penetrate their hull. Frowned. A ship without weapons, possibly without shields, facing down 300 warships. Either the humans were suicidal or they knew something she did not. Neither option was comforting. Time remaining, she asked. 40% of the time unit remains, Admiral. On the horizon, Captain listened to the ultimatum with a heavy heart. The crew had gathered on the bridge, all 12 of them, their faces reflecting various shades of disappointment and resignation. They had hoped for a different response. They had hoped that the passage of time had made them wiser, more open to peaceful contact. They had hoped in vain. The old patterns hold, said quietly. Fear leads to aggression. Aggression leads to violence. Violence leads to regret. Not always, replied. Some species break the cycle, some learn to choose differently. They have surrounded us with 300 warships. They demand our surrender. That does not suggest a willingness to learn. No, it does not. Walked to the center of the bridge, his footsteps echoing in the quiet space. But we must give them every chance, every opportunity to step back from the edge. That is why we are here. What do you propose? Asked. We respond. We repeat our message of peace. We make it absolutely clear that we mean them no harm and desire only dialogue. Paused. And then we wait. And if they fire, then we show them the truth, but only after they have fired, only after they have made their choice with full knowledge of what we offer. The crew nodded. This was the way humans handled contact with aggressive species. No preemptive strikes, no displays of force, only patience, communication, and the hope that wisdom would win over fear. Opened a communication channel. His voice carried across the void to the waiting fleet. Admiral, this is Captain of the human vessel Horizon. We understand your concern. An unknown ship in your space is cause for caution. We respect your desire to protect your people, but we cannot surrender because we are not enemies. We came here for one reason only, to talk, to meet you, to learn about your civilization and share knowledge with you if you wish it. We ask only for the chance to speak with your leaders. No weapons, no demands, just words. Please, Admiral, give peace a chance. On the Eternal Glory, the message played through the bridge speakers. Officers exchanged uncertain glances. This was not the response of an enemy. This was not the defiance of a hostile power. This was something different, something they did not know how to process. Admiral, officer said hesitantly, the human captain seems sincere. Of course he seems sincere, replied, though her voice lacked conviction. If they are as advanced as the records suggest, deception would be child's play for them. Or perhaps they are telling the truth. Turned to look at the young officer. Was talented and far too innocent for the realities of command. She still believed that intentions could be trusted, that words could be taken at face value. Truth is a luxury we cannot afford, said. My orders are clear. If they do not surrender, we attack. Admiral, with respect, those orders were given before we received this message. The Emperor does not know that the humans are offering peaceful dialogue. Perhaps if we informed him. The Emperor knows what he knows. Our duty is to obey, not to question. Turned back to the screen. The time unit was nearly expired. The moment of decision had arrived. All ships prepare to fire on my command. Across the fleet, weapon systems hummed to life. Energy weapons charged to full power. Missile bays opened, revealing rows of warheads designed to pierce shields and crack armor. 300 ships aimed their full arsenal at a vessel smaller than most of their cargo shuttles. On the horizon, watched the power readings spike across the enemy fleet. They are charging weapons, Captain, all of them. Nodded slowly. He had seen this before. The moment when fear overwhelmed reason. The moment when a species chose violence over understanding. It never got easier to watch. Maintain position, he ordered. Do not power any systems. Do not raise shields. Let them see that we are not resisting. Captain, if they fire with full force, even our technology will protect us, you know this, but they do not. They see a helpless ship about to be destroyed. Let them see it. Let them make their choice with that image in their minds. On the Eternal Glory, Admiral raised her hand. Around her, the bridge crew held their breath. On the screen, the human vessel floated peacefully, making no attempt to defend itself. This is wrong, a voice whispered in her mind. This is murder, not war. She silenced it. She was a soldier. She had her orders. All ships, she said, fire. The universe erupted in light. 300 warships unleashed their fury at once. Beams of concentrated energy lanced through space. Missiles streaked toward their target like a swarm of angry insects. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon, enough to turn any known ship into scattered atoms. The horizon should have ceased to exist in that instant. It did not. The weapon's fire reached the small gray vessel and simply passed through. Energy beams that should have vaporized metal met no resistance. Missiles that should have detonated on impact continued through empty space as if the ship was not there. The entire devastating assault accomplished nothing. On the bridge of the Eternal Glory, chaos erupted. What happened? Shouted, report. The target is undamaged, voice cracked with disbelief. All weapons fire pass through without contact. It is as if the ship does not exist. That is impossible. I am telling you what the sensors show, Admiral. The ship is still there, completely intact, and we hit nothing. Stared at the screen. The horizon floated exactly where it had been, unchanged, unmoved, unharmed. Around it, the remnants of their attack dissipated into the darkness of space. 300 ships had fired with everything they had, and they had accomplished absolutely nothing. How, she whispered, how is this possible? On the horizon, Captain watched the attack wash over them without effect. The ship's defensive systems had engaged automatically, shifting the vessel slightly out of phase with normal space. It looked like their weapons had passed through empty air. In reality, the horizon existed in a layer of reality that their technology could not touch. Phase shift complete, reported. No damage to any system. We remained in normal space throughout the attack, merely offset by a few dimensional degrees. They cannot understand what happened, added. Their technology has no framework for dimensional manipulation. To them, we simply became intangible. Nodded, he felt no satisfaction in their confusion, only sadness at what came next. Open a channel, he said. Admiral's face appeared on the screen. She looked shocked, frightened, and desperate in equal measure. Behind her, her bridge crew was in disarray, shouting questions that no one could answer. Admiral said gently, please listen to me. I understand your fear. I understand why you attacked. But you have seen now that violence against us accomplishes nothing. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your fleet, powerful as it is, poses no threat to this vessel. Please, Admiral, stop this before it goes further. Accept our offer of peace while it still stands. His face contorted with emotions she could not control. Fear, shame, rage. The rage of someone facing an enemy they cannot defeat, cannot understand, cannot even touch. What are you? She demanded. What kind of beings survive what we just did? We are human, Admiral, nothing more, nothing less. We simply grew up. We learned things that your species has not yet learned, and we hoped when we came here that we could share that knowledge with you. As friends, as partners, not as enemies. You expect me to believe that, after what you just showed us? I expect nothing, I only hope. His voice was filled with genuine warmth. Admiral, I know what you are feeling right now. Every species we have contacted has felt it. The realization that you are not alone in the universe, that there are beings far beyond your current understanding. It is terrifying. It makes you feel small and helpless. But that feeling will pass. And when it does, you will see that we offer nothing but friendship." "Friendship?" laughed bitterly. "You have made us look like fools. You let us attack you knowing it would fail just to prove how weak we are. That is not friendship. That is humiliation." "No, Admiral, we let you attack because we needed you to see the truth for yourself. Words mean nothing to a species built on conquest. Only demonstration matters. Now you have seen. Now you know. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge?" The communication channel fell silent. On both ships, beings stared at each other across the void, trying to understand what had just happened and what it meant for the future. Finally, Admiral spoke. Her voice was quiet, defeated, and very, very tired. "What do you want from us?" "Only to talk, Admiral. Only to explain why we have returned after so long. Only to offer you a choice that every species must eventually face." Paused. "Meet with us. Bring your leaders. Let us speak as equals, and I promise you everything will become clear." Closed her eyes, her orders had been simple: attack and destroy. But her enemy had proven impossible to destroy. Her orders had failed. She had failed. What happened next was beyond her authority to decide. "I will contact the Emperor," she said finally. "I will tell him what has happened. The decision of whether to meet with you is his alone." "That is all we ask, Admiral. Thank you." The channel closed. Stood alone on her bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of everything she had believed about the universe. Around her, her officers waited for orders she could not give. For the first time in 300 years, Admiral of the Imperial Navy had no idea what to do next. The Emperor's throne room was the largest enclosed space on the. Built 10,000 years ago by the first emperor, it was designed to make anyone who entered feel small and insignificant. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath it. The walls were covered with the banners of 1,000 conquered worlds. The floor stretched for nearly a kilometer from the entrance to the raised platform where the emperor sat. Today, that vast space was filled with the most powerful beings in the empire. High Commander stood at the front, his white scales gleaming in the light of crystal chandeliers. Behind him, the full High Council waited in nervous silence. Generals, admirals, scientists, diplomats, everyone who mattered had been summoned. And in the center of the room, standing completely alone, was Captain. He had been transported down from the horizon 3 hours ago, leaving his ship in orbit under the watchful eyes of the defeated fleet. The Emperor had demanded a face-to-face meeting and had agreed without hesitation. It was what he had wanted all along. Emperor sat on his throne, ancient and magnificent. He was the 47th ruler of the empire, descended from a line that stretched back to the dawn of their civilization. His scales were gold, a color that marked the royal bloodline, and his eyes burned with an intelligence that centuries of rule had only sharpened. "So," the emperor said, his voice echoing through the vast chamber, "this is a human." Bowed respectfully. "I am captain of the vessel Horizon, representing the human collective. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Your Majesty." "I did not agree to anything. I commanded it. There is a difference." "Of course, my apologies." Studied the human before him. He had read the ancient texts, studied the recovered records, learned everything the Empire knew about the species that had vanished 8,000 years ago. Nothing had prepared him for this moment. The human looked so ordinary. Soft skin, no scales, no claws, no visible weapons of any kind. If it passed him on the street, he would not have given him a second glance. And yet this simple-looking creature had survived the combined assault of 300 warships without a scratch. "You attacked my fleet," said. 300 of my finest ships fired upon your vessel and you did nothing. Explain." "We did not attack, Your Majesty. We defended. There is a significant difference." "Your words are clever, but they change nothing. You humiliated my navy. You proved that our weapons are useless against you. And now you stand here, in the heart of my empire, as if you own the place." The emperor leaned forward. Give me one reason why I should not have you executed where you stand. Smile gently, because you could not execute me even if you tried, and because killing me would accomplish nothing except to prove that the learned nothing from our first encounter. Murmurs rippled through the assembled nobility. No one spoke to the emperor like that. No one dared. But simply nodded. Honesty, I appreciate that. So tell me, human, why are you here? After 8,000 years of silence, why have your people returned? May I speak freely, your majesty? You seem to be doing so already. Why stop now? Took a deep breath. This was the moment he had traveled across the galaxy for, the moment that would determine the future of an entire species. 8,000 years ago, my people left this region of space. We sealed ourselves away behind barriers that no other species could penetrate. We watched from afar as the younger civilizations grew and expanded. We watched as empires rose and fell. We watched as wars were fought and planets were destroyed. And we did nothing. Why? Demanded. If you had the power to intervene, why did you not? Because intervention was not our purpose. We learned long ago that civilizations must find their own path. They must make their own mistakes, learn their own lessons, grow at their own pace. If we had interfered, we would have stunted your development. You would have become dependent on us, unable to solve your own problems, unable to stand on your own feet. So you abandoned us. We gave you space to become who you are. There is a difference. Considered this. It was not the answer he had expected. He had imagined the humans as conquerors who had grown bored with their empire, or as cowards who had fled from some unknown threat. The idea that they had deliberately stepped back to allow other species to develop was strange. You speak of watching, he said. That implies observation. You have been observing us all this time. Yes. And what have you observed? His expression grew sad. We have observed that they are at a crossroads. Your empire has reached its maximum sustainable size. You control 1,000 worlds, but each new conquest costs more than the last. Your resources are straining. Your population is restless. Your military, once a source of pride, has become a drain on your economy. The emperor's golden scales darkened with anger. You presume to tell me the state of my own empire. I tell you only what our observations show, your majesty. And what our observations show is that the empire has approximately 300 years before it collapses under its own weight. Silence fell over the throne room. The nobles looked at each other with shock and fear. Such words bordered on treason. No one was permitted to suggest that the empire was anything less than eternal. But continued, his voice calm and steady. This is not unique to your people. Every empire built on conquest eventually faces this moment. The cost of maintaining control exceeds the benefits of expansion. Internal pressures build until they cannot be contained. The center weakens while the edges fray. And then, suddenly, everything falls apart. You have seen this before, asked quietly. Many times. We have watched countless civilizations rise to glory and fall to ruin. The pattern is always the same. Conquest, expansion, overextension, collapse. It is the cycle of aggressive species throughout the galaxy. And your people, did you follow this pattern? Once, long ago before we learned better. Eyes grew distant as if remembering something from the depths of time. Humanity nearly destroyed itself more than once. We fought wars that killed billions. We poisoned our own world. We came within a breath of extinction multiple times, but we survived. We learned. We changed. How? We stopped conquering and started building. We stopped fighting each other and started working together. We stopped seeing the universe as something to be dominated and started seeing it as something to be understood. Met the emperor's eyes. We stopped being what we were and became what we are. Was silent for a long moment. Around him, his advisors waited anxiously, trying to read his mood, trying to guess what he was thinking. But the emperor's golden face was unreadable. Finally, he spoke. You say our empire will collapse. You say this is inevitable. If that is true, why are you here? Why tell us something we cannot change? Because it is not inevitable, Your Majesty. The cycle can be broken. The pattern can be changed, but only if you choose to change it. And I suppose you are here to tell us how. No, shook his head. I am here to offer you a choice. The same choice we have offered every species we have contacted over the choice that determines whether a civilization grows into something magnificent or destroys itself. What choice? Stepped forward. The guards tensed, but a gesture from the Emperor kept them in place. You can continue as you are. Keep conquering. Keep fighting. Keep trying to dominate everything around you. And in 300 years, give or take, your empire will crumble and your people will fade into history, remembered only as another failed experiment in aggressive expansion. Lord. Or you can change. You can stop seeing other species as enemies to be conquered and start seeing them as potential partners. You can redirect the resources you spend on war towards science, art, exploration. You can build something that lasts not because you force it to last, but because it deserves to last. You make it sound simple. It is simple, but simple is not the same as easy. Change requires sacrifice. It requires admitting that everything you have believed was wrong. It requires facing the fear of the unknown and choosing to embrace it instead of fighting it. The Emperor rose from his throne. He was tall, taller than, and his golden scales caught the light like living fire. He descended the steps of his platform and walked toward the human until they stood face to face. You speak of partnership, said. What does humanity offer in return for our change? Knowledge, Your Majesty. Technology. Understanding of the universe that would take you millions of years to develop on your own. Access to a community of species who have made the same choice and found peace and prosperity beyond anything conquest could provide. And if we refuse? His face grew sad. Then we will leave. We will seal the barriers behind us once again. We will watch from afar as your empire crumbles and your people suffer. And in 1,000 years, when new civilizations rise from the ashes of your failure, we will return and offer them the same choice. You would abandon us to our fate. We would respect your decision, whatever it is. That is what we do. We do not force our way on anyone. We only offer the opportunity for something better. Stared at the human for a long time. Around them, the great and powerful of the empire held their breath, waiting for their ruler to speak. This is much to consider, finally said. You ask me to overturn 10,000 years of tradition, to abandon the principles that built our empire, to trust beings who have already proven they can destroy us on a whim. I ask you to consider the alternative, Your Majesty, nothing more. The Emperor turned and walked back to his throne. He sat heavily, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. I will need time, he said, time to consult with my advisors, time to consider all the implications of what you have said. Of course, we have waited 8,000 years. We can wait a little longer. In the meantime, you will remain here as my guest. Your ship will remain in orbit, and you will answer any questions my people have about your species and your intentions. Bode, I am at your service, Your Majesty. As the guards led him away, allowed himself a small smile. The Emperor had not refused. He had not ordered another attack. He had asked for time. In the delicate dance of first contact, asking for time was almost always the first step toward acceptance. Almost always. The Emperor sat on his throne long after the human had been taken away. The nobles had been dismissed. The guards had been sent to their posts. Only High Commander remained, standing in the shadows at the edge of the room. What do you think? Asked without turning around. Stepped forward. His ancient scales seemed even paler in the dim light. I think the human speaks truth, Your Majesty. I have studied the records. I have analyzed the data. Everything he said about our empire's trajectory matches our own projections. The projections we do not share with anyone. Yes, either he has access to intelligence we cannot detect, or his species truly has been watching us for all this time. Either way, his knowledge is accurate. Closed his eyes. 300 years, that is all that remains of my empire. Unless we change, as he suggests. Change? The emperor laughed bitterly. My ancestors conquered 1,000 worlds. My people have lived by the sword for 10,000 years. And now, a soft-skinned creature from a myth tells me to put down my weapons and make friends. He opened his eyes. How do you think my subjects would react to such a suggestion? Was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I think, Your Majesty, that they would follow you anywhere. They always have. The emperor stared at his oldest advisor, his oldest friend, his oldest soldier. Even into peace. Even into peace. Turned to look out the great windows of his throne room. Beyond them, the night sky blazed with stars. Somewhere up there, a tiny ship waited. A tiny ship with the power to end everything or begin something new. Summon the human captain tomorrow, he said finally. I have more questions for him, many more questions. Bowed and into the shadows. The emperor sat alone in the darkness, looking at the stars, and wondered if 10,000 years of history could truly be undone by a single conversation. Only time would tell. 1 year had passed since the human vessel first appeared in space. 1 year of questions, negotiations, debates, and difficult decisions. 1 year that had changed everything. Admiral stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Glory, watching the planet below turn slowly in the darkness. It was not her. It was For, a border world that had been conquered 3 centuries ago. A world that, until recently, had been nothing more than a resource extraction site for the Empire. Now it was something else entirely. The surface sparkled with new lights. Cities that had been gray and lifeless were growing, changing, coming alive. Schools were being built. Hospitals were opening. The native population, once treated as little more than workers, were being recognized as citizens with rights and voices of their own. It was the first world to benefit from what the emperor had called the new path. Behind her, footsteps approached. She did not need to turn around to know who it was. Captain, she said, I wondered when you would come. The human stepped up beside her, his eyes reflecting the light of the planet below. Admiral, it has been a while since we spoke directly. You have been busy, advising the emperor, training our scientists, answering endless questions from curious nobles. Your people learn quickly. It is impressive. Turned to look at him. In the past year, she had come to know this strange being better than she had expected. He was kind in a way that still confused her, patient in a way that bordered on supernatural, and wise in a way that made her feel like a child playing at being an adult. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. Why did you really come back? The official answer is that you wanted to offer us a choice, but there must be more to it than that. 8,000 years is a long time. Something must have triggered your return. Was silent for a moment, considering the question. Then he smiled, a small, sad expression that carried the weight of ages. You are right, he admitted. There was a trigger, something we observed that made us realize we could not stay silent any longer. What was it? Your people discovered faster-than-light communication. 20 years ago, your scientists cracked the barrier that had limited your expansion. Before that, your empire was contained by the simple physics of distance. Conquests took decades. Communication took years. But now we could expand without limits, finished. We could reach every corner of the galaxy in our lifetime. Yes, and when we saw that, we knew it was time. Because there are other species out there, Admiral. Species that have also reached for the stars. Species that are building their own empires, making their own choices, walking their own paths. And you feared we would destroy them. Shook his head. No, we feared you would destroy yourselves, not physically perhaps, but in every way that matters. We have seen it happen before. A civilization gains great power and uses it for conquest. They spread across the stars, subjugating everyone they meet. And then slowly they lose everything that made them who they were. They become nothing but hunger and violence, empty shells driven by instinct rather than purpose. You thought that would happen to us. It was happening to you. The of 100 years ago were different from the of today. Your art had grown stagnant. Your philosophy had withered. Your curiosity had been replaced by a simple desire for more. More worlds, more resources, more power. You were dying inside even as you expanded outward. Wanted to argue, but she could not. She remembered the empire of her youth, the endless parades of military might, the celebrations of conquest that replaced any other form of cultural expression, the way every conversation eventually came back to territory and dominance. She had not realized how hollow it had become until the human showed her something different. And now, she asked, what do you see when you look at us now? Hope said simply. For the first time in centuries, I see genuine hope for the people. Below them, the planet continued its slow rotation. In a few hours, the sun would rise over the eastern continents, bringing light to cities that were transforming themselves day by day. The Emperor has made his decision, said. He announced it this morning. The new path will become the official policy of the Empire. Conquest will end. Cooperation will begin. All subject worlds will be given the choice to remain part of the Empire as equals or to go their own way. I know, I was there when he signed the declaration. Some of my fellow officers are not happy. They see it as surrender, as weakness, as the death of everything our ancestors built. What do you see? Considered the question carefully. A year ago, she would have agreed with her colleagues. She would have seen this moment as the end of everything she had trained her whole life to protect. But a year of watching the humans had changed her, seeing their technology, yes, but also seeing their kindness, their patience, their genuine desire to help rather than dominate. It had shown her that there was another way to be powerful, another way to matter in the universe. I see a beginning, she said finally. I do not know what we will become. I do not know if we can truly change after 10,000 years of being what we were, but I see a chance, a possibility, and that is more than we had before you came. Nodded. That is all anyone can ask for, Admiral, the possibility of something better. The rest is up to you. They stood together in silence, watching the planet below. What happens now? Asked. Now that we have made our choice, what role will humanity play in our future? That depends on you. We will remain nearby, ready to help when you ask for it. We will share our knowledge with those who seek it. We will watch and advise and support, but we will not lead. This is your civilization, Admiral, your future to build. And if we fail, if we slip back into our old ways? His expression grew serious. Then we will be very disappointed, but we will not abandon you. We will offer you the chance to try again as many times as it takes. That is what we do. That is what we have always done. Why? Turned to face him fully. Why do you care so much about species you have never met? Why spend your existence helping others when you could simply enjoy your power? Because we were helped once long ago, said. When humanity was young and foolish and on the brink of destroying ourselves, another species reached out to us. They offered us the same choice we offer you. They showed us that there was another way, and they waited patiently while we learned to walk the better path. What happened to them? They moved on. They ascended to a level of existence that we cannot yet comprehend. But before they left, they passed the responsibility to us. They asked us to do for others what they had done for us, to be the guides and helpers and teachers that every young species needs. And you agreed. We agreed. It became our purpose, our reason for existing beyond mere survival. Every species we help is a gift we give to those who helped us. Every civilization that chooses peace over war is proof that their sacrifice was worth it. Try to imagine it. A chain of kindness stretching back through the ages. Species helping species, civilization lifting civilization, each generation paying forward the gift they had received. It was so different from everything she had been taught, so contrary to the philosophy of competition and dominance. And yet somehow, it felt right. It felt like the truth she had been searching for without knowing it. "I have a request," she said. "Name it." "I want to visit your. I want to see what humanity has become. I want to understand how you transformed from what you were into what you are." Smiled, a genuine expression of warmth that lit up his entire face. "I would be honored to show you, Admiral, though I should warn you, it may change the way you see everything." "I am counting on it." 3 months later, Admiral stood on the surface of Earth. Around her, cities of crystal and light rose toward a sky that was somehow bluer than any she had ever seen. Gardens stretched between the towers, filled with plants from 1,000 worlds. People walked through the streets, laughing and talking, their faces open and unguarded in a way that still shocked her. Captain walked beside her, pointing out landmarks and explaining history. The wars that had nearly destroyed this world, the plagues that had killed billions, the long, slow recovery that had taken generations. "We were not so different from you once," he said. "We conquered, we fought. We believed that power was the only thing that mattered. It took nearly losing everything to show us how wrong we were." "How did you change?" asked. "How did you become this?" "One choice at a time, one person at a time, one generation at a time. It was not quick. It was not easy. Many people resisted. Many believed that the old ways were the only ways, but slowly, gradually, the balance shifted. Those who chose peace began to outnumber those who chose war, and eventually peace became who we were." They stopped at the edge of a great plaza. In the center stood a statue, a simple figure with arms raised toward the sky. "This is the Memorial of Choice," explained. "It marks the place where humanity made its final decision, where we agreed as a species to put down our weapons and build something better." "Was it unanimous?" "No, nothing involving billions of people is ever unanimous, but it was enough. Enough people chose hope over fear. Enough people decided that the future mattered more than the past, and that was enough." Stared at the statue, a species that had learned to choose peace, a species that had overcome its own nature and become something greater. If they could do it, perhaps they could too. "I want to learn," she said suddenly. "I want to understand how you did this, not the technology, not the science. I want to understand how you changed your hearts." Looked at her with respect. "That is the hardest lesson of all, Admiral, but if you are willing to learn, I am willing to teach." "I am willing." And so stayed on Earth. She studied human history, human philosophy, human art. She learned about their wars and their peace, their failures and their triumphs. She came to understand that the transformation she sought was not about technology or policy, but about something deeper, something internal. When she finally returned to she was a different person. The admiral who had commanded 300 ships to attack a peaceful vessel was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who had seen what was possible and refused to accept anything less. She spoke to the emperor, she spoke to the nobles, she spoke to the common people on 100 different worlds. She told them what she had learned, what she had seen, what she believed was possible for their species. Not everyone listened. Not everyone agreed. Change never comes easily to those who have known nothing else. But some listened, some agreed, some chose to walk the new path that the humans had shown them. And slowly, generation by generation, they began to change. 100 years later, when the last of the old empire had faded into history, a new council gathered on representatives from 1,000 worlds, species who had once been conquered and species who had once conquered them, all meeting as equals. The topic of discussion was not war or territory or dominance. It was exploration, discovery, the shared adventure of reaching toward the stars. And watching from the edge of the solar system, aboard a small gray vessel that bore no visible weapons and no shield generators, Captain smiled. Another species had made the choice. Another civilization had broken the cycle. The gift had been passed on once again. He opened a communication channel to the human collective, to the billions of his people who waited to hear the news. Mission complete, he said. They have chosen well. They will be good partners in the ages to come. Then he turned the horizon toward the stars and headed out into the endless night, ready to find the next species that was ready for the same choice. The universe was vast and full of young civilizations waiting to learn the truth that humanity had discovered so long ago. Peace was not weakness. Cooperation was not surrender. And sometimes, the greatest power of all was the willingness to offer a hand instead of a fist. The horizon vanished into the darkness, leaving behind a world transformed and a species reborn. In the grand story of the galaxy, it was just one more chapter. But for it was everything. It was the beginning of something that would never end.